The illustrious Jabba bids you welcome. I'm going to regret this.
I'm Pete Mitchell. He's Peyton Jones. And this is the Church Planter Podcast, brought to you by Church Planter Magazine. Hey, Church Planter, this is Pete Mitchell.
And this is Peyton Jones, author of Reaching the Unreached, Becoming Raiders of the Lost Ark. Cha-ching!
And here I was going to start it by saying, and I got no commercial to play for you today. And you made a commercial. Spur of the moment.
You know, when I lead small groups, Pete, do you notice how I got my commercial voice on? When I lead small groups, I like to take people through reachingtheunreachedbook.com.
Hey.
And I showed you where to go. See what I did? And you can get bulk discounts, and it'll mobilize your church on mission.
Speaking
and it was written by a really sexy church planner.
Reaching the Unreached. Speaking of your book, we by the way, I actually I had to spend some time at the bar alone this week, and so I read yet another chapter of your book.
You always read my book at the bar.
I got to get tuned up before I
kind of no joke, right? Like, I did not hear this with Church Zero. I would get people writing going, dude, you so perfectly put into words what I felt. On this one, I get people writing, dude, you wrecked me. That book wrecked me. So
yeah, so that's actually, I should have grabbed my my iPad with all the notes in it, and that could have been our topic for today. But at this point, I don't remember any of the things that
we'll go through that.
I don't remember what I jotted down. I don't remember anything I highlighted.
Where's your iPad?
It's in another room. And the other, look at you. Please, can we talk about my book?
I'm still mulling our topic over.
And I didn't actually get through the full chapter. I was like, you write such long chapters. It's too long. I need another beer. It's too long.
We were on the way to, I do daddy-daughter dates on Friday, and Liberty reaches in the back seat, sees a box of the books, and goes, can I give this to my teacher? Nice. I told her, well, that's $20, babe. No, I'm teasing. I said, sure. But yeah, you know, it's, I had a reason for bringing that up. Now I forget it, but I remember thinking, I wonder if her teacher reads that, if it will apply in any way at all to her. Like, you know, it is the kind of book that it basically tells you that you don't got this. And so tell me, what chapter are you on?
Chapter 5, if I remember correct.
Okay, I know I wrote it. But I don't do numbers.
And I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember what I was like highlighting. Oh, this is good, blah, 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 blah.
Was it Jerusalem?
I don't remember anything about Jerusalem.
All right. What was it about?
I don't remember. What part of I don't have my notes in front of me are you not getting?
Yeah. Go get your iPad.
Nope.
Dang.
I'm not.
I remember when I was a kid. And me and my brother still quote this. We were at a birthday party, and I was in kindergarten, and there were these kids that lived in my neighborhood. They're named Ricky and Juju. Yes, that was the little boy's name, Juju. And I remember going to his birthday party, and it was the best, man, because his aunt was there, and she goes, "Oh, Ricky, honey, happy birthday! I forgot your present." And he goes, "Well, go home and get it." And that's been like a classic line that we'll go home and get it.
I love it.
It was rad.
That's cool. Yeah. So, what's been going on with you this last week?
Well, I can tell you, I am now in my apartment. So if you hear my daughter or my wife or whatever, I happen to be in my apartment, not in my house environs. All my walls are torn down in my house. You can literally see through the front yard to the backyard. And the blower, the garden, the air blowers are notorious. You guys don't have the leaf blowers in like Pennsylvania. I'm guessing, right? Like this is just a constant sound in California, leaf blowing. We just blow dust around because we don't get a bunch of rain. And I don't know how this works, Pete. Like we changed the time of the podcast today. We changed the location of and there's a leaf blower outside my window.
It's just the way it works.
It's just, it's like a homing beacon for the podcast. Oh, it's like when you used to watch Richie Rich as a kid, and Richie Rich would get like into some like, catastrophe or some weird situation. All of a sudden, like Irona, his robot maid, would go ding, 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 Richie's in trouble. And she would like go wherever he was. She'd go into like, nuclear Irona robot mode. And that's how it is with the leaf blowers. They get a signal. There's a central dispatch, and it's like, we're going to need you to go to the apartments over in Carlsbad. Just doing a podcast.
So, good news.
You're ignoring me.
I am, because it's a stupid story.
That's rad. I got to talk about the 80s.
Good news. My wife is not working tomorrow. So, Petey gets to go to the gun show because she's going to watch the kids. I just thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah. I was thinking you were going to say like, oh, my wife's not working, so we're going to go to breakfast and spend a little time together.
Dude, you don't understand. We don't do that kind of thing because we got the 2 kids and no one to watch them. So that becomes a miserable trip for us.
Yeah, I got you.
Going out to eat. It's not fun.
Yeah, I got you. So today I got the kids, and I'm picking up my daughter from school, and we're heading to Barnes and Noble, which would be like a snore fest for you.
I don't understand what that is. What is it?
It's a bookstore, and we walk around to look at books.
I thought it was like an eatery.
It's pretty cool. And, it's hard for me to go there because I got so many stinking books I'm trying to read through. And then we go to Cheesecake Factory, and everybody gets to pick out what cheesecake they want. Ooh. So, time with Dad, when Dad's got the kids, is pretty cool.
Well, at least your kids like you. That's something I don't.
No, they like that I take them to the bookstore and have stories read to them, and they get cheesecake. I don't know if they even know I'm there.
Church Planner Magazine.
I just felt like I needed to kind of throw that in there, let everyone know what they're listening to. By the way, we are going to get to some church planning goodness here in a bit. This is the part of the show we call Smack Talk. So
it's like the Seinfeld episode of church planning. Like the first 30 minutes, it's the show about nothing. And then the second half is like Friends. It's a show about everything.
We were talking to someone yesterday that will remain nameless until contracts are signed. It was the best, man. And then we're talking about like we're working out a deal between the magazine, the podcast, this particular organization. And it comes to the section of the agreement. We're going through the agreement, right? It comes to the section of the agreement, the podcast. And Peyton goes, well, look, we're not going to change the structure of the podcast. The first part's still going to be Smack Talk. And I was just dying. I was like, that's right, buddy. That's how we roll. It's Smack Talk or die. That's
yes.
it.
You can have Smack Talk when you pry it from my cold, dead fingers.
If our listeners would say that same thing, that would be really cool.
It would be cool. I think we probably scare away most of our first-time listeners. They're like, these guys are lame. And you would be right for saying that and thinking that. But it's always funny because when we start off, Pete and I aren't even recording, and we're laughing and killing ourselves.
Going, why aren't we recording this?
Why am I not recording this?
And what's funny is I don't even remember what we were laughing about, but it was really funny.
Yeah.
So we got a review for the podcast, which, by the way, we love reviews, guys. And if you write us a review, all you got to do is go into Church Planner Magazine, the app, and in the bottom right-hand corner, there's a little settings button. Tap that, and then there'll be a link that says contact us here. Just tap that link. It generates an email, sends us an email, and go, hey, I gave you guys a review. And we're going to unlock some free stuff in the app for you. One of those $20 programs that are in there or something like that. We'll give you free stuff. We bribe people when they give us reviews.
Yeah, leave us a review as well on the podcast.
Well, that's what this was for. This was for the podcast. Oh. And the title is Love These Guys. It's from Speeny9. I don't know how else to say it. Speeny9.
Carefully, Pete. Say it very carefully.
As an aspiring church planner coming out of an established church ministry, this podcast has been such an encouragement. It also helps that these guys are real and honest about their own lives and experience. Thanks, Pete and Peyton, for this. I was like, wow, I dig it. That was from the heart, baby. That was from the heart.
Yeah. Real, raw, relevant.
What is that?
R's.
What is that? Like a new book advertisement? Real, raw, relevant. Reaching the unreached.
It will be now.
Hey,
man, this leaf blower
there's
is
your
like
leaf blower.
the thorn in my side. And Satan gave me, or the Lord gave me a thorn in my flesh, a leaf blower to torment me. He's like the podcast is on my right, the window's on my left. I feel like, there's leaf blowing in one ear and anyways.
Yeah. So,
I'm annoyed. Martin Lloyd Jones, by the way, during World War II was preaching in Westminster Chapel and a bomb was dropped from the Axis. The Nazis dropped a bomb. It demolished the building across the street. Lloyd Jones is in the middle of preaching. This bomb goes off, and he pauses. He looks up, and he keeps preaching. And they asked him later, why did you do that? And he said, well, I knew that if I panicked, everybody else would panic and they'd run outside and evacuate and they'd be in danger and probably die. So he said, I just made a conscious decision. I'm just going to keep preaching. If I stay calm, everybody else will stay calm and I'll turn my attention back to the Lord. Boom. How rad is that?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't handle a leaf blower. John Wesley, Pete, he had people climb trees while he's preaching and pee on him. Pee on him. I watch Naked and Afraid every once in a while, and there was a couple that almost got driven nuts by a monkey that went up in a tree and peed on them every night. And I can't handle a leaf blower. John Wesley.
Are you serious? Now I have to start watching Naked and Afraid. That's hilarious.
Yeah, they lovingly called him Monkey. It wasn't very original, but that's what they called him.
Yeah, so oh yeah, so hey, got to share this with everybody. This was one of the things that it really bothered me, and I want to be fair and careful in how I talk about this, but it kind of happened right before I was reading your book, so that didn't help when I'm reading your book after this happened. So as we've shared before, I got a buddy. He's in jail right now.
Oh yeah.
And, so I had sent him a copy of your book. He's like reading everything like crazy. He's a new Christian. And, so he started asking me about baptism. Hey, is this something I should do? Blah, blah, blah. So we're having this conversation back and forth, via email. One of the few ways he's able to, communicate with the outside world. And, so there's a prosperity gospel guy at the prison, one of the inmates. And, typical prosperity gospel stuff, which according to my buddy, that's what all the inmates love to hear. As soon as you get out of here, you're supposed to be rich and wealthy, and that's what God wants for you. And he's the guy who does the baptisms at the church at the prison. So I'm like, hey, maybe you can talk to, you mentioned there's these other, pastors that come in and stuff. And, I go, doing a baptism is like a highlight for a pastor. They love that thing. Right. So, if you went and asked one of those guys, I'm sure they'd be like, yeah, I'd love to do the baptism. And so, anyway, he emails back to me. He goes, well, and I haven't even been able to talk to the other pastor that comes here, because he leaves so quickly. He literally leaves out the side door so he doesn't have to talk to any of the inmates. And I was a little bit like bothered by that. And I gotta be fair in how I say this, because I don't know what's going on in that other pastor's life. Literally, maybe he's got to run to somewhere else. Maybe he's got to meet with someone. I can't judge the guy, right? He's going to a prison to preach, so he's already doing more than I'm doing, right? Does that make sense what I'm saying? I can tell you're reading something else. So I don't know if you're following me at all.
Oh, I'm on mute. Sorry. I'm following you.
So this is Whenever
I'm talking, but no words are coming out.
Whenever either one of us gets on a roll, the other one just kind of tunes him out, mutes the line. All right, I'm going to go do this. Oh yeah, I gotta pipe something in over here. But anyway, it did make me think. So as I've shared before, I'm trying to get involved with prison ministries, and so far I've been told that one of our local prisons, the main one, they don't need any more volunteers because there's not enough people who go to the training session that they do inside the prison. So it hit me, man. I think what I got to do, I think I got to do something that I really don't want to do. And that is I got to go to Twin Towers in LA, man.
Really?
Yeah. Do you know Twin Towers?
No.
Let's put it like this. Ruben used to say, I was always trying to avoid that place. Like, that's not the one you want to go to.
That's one of our church planters, Ruben Young.
Yeah.
When he says he's trying to avoid that, he means
it's not a fun prison.
He didn't want to live there.
Yeah. That's not a fun prison to go to. And but
some of our planters have been, let's say, connoisseurs of prisons.
They've got
their lives before Christ.
They've got ratings, right? They got their own little app.
Can you hear that?
Yeah,
he's right outside my window.
I really wish I
rebuke you.
I really wish I had a train soundtrack right now because I'd play that just to.
This is crazy. I have to mute myself. You have to keep talking. I go on without me.
No, all I was gonna say is the only reason why I didn't want to go to Twin Towers is because it's so far. Like driving to LA on a weekday from where I live, that is prison. That's a whole nother kind of prison. But I think I'm going to have to because it's like the only prison I can get into. So
you live in a gangster's paradise, man. You live in a nice little spot, this little nook in Long Beach.
Dude, we've got a lot of, we have a lot of burglaries here.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. And it's because it's a nice area. Everyone comes here and breaks in.
On the edge of Long Beach.
Yeah. Technically in Orange County, but on the edge.
But borders, like literally borders Long Beach.
Yeah, it does. One of our borders is Long Beach, which is LA County. And, yeah, so anyway, that'll be something that I'll be doing. But hey, I will throw this out to all of our listeners. If
I kind of want to go with you.
What, up to LA?
Yeah.
I thought that was hell for me. That's like, I don't know. That's like
yeah, but that's the belly of the beast, man. There ain't no worse prison.
No, not state run, before like, probably San Quentin.
Yeah.
I mean, down here, it's definitely one of the worst.
Yeah. I kind of don't want you to have that cool experience without me.
Well, I don't even know what the experience will be, but I know the guy.
It's terrifying.
I met the guy who's a chaplain there, and he's like, "Hey, if you wanna come help out here, we just require that you sign up for a year, and you got to commit to doing it at least once a month."
Nice.
I'm like, dude, I can suffer through that traffic once a month, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I could do that.
But you got to send them to Long Beach when they go, "Hey, chap, where do I go when I get out?" You got to send them to us.
I don't know.
Or Ruben.
Yeah, definitely Ruben.
Yeah. Well, they got Bonomo.
But see, I still remember Ruben saying, "Yeah, when I started my church plant, I thought everyone was like an ex-con like me." And then I'm talking to them all and getting their backstories. None of them are. Why are they following me? But
out of morbid curiosity, Ruben. That's why they're following you.
But here's what I'm going to throw out there. If anybody is in Oregon and will go visit my buddy who's at Sheridan in Oregon, it's the Federal Correction Institute in Sheridan. I will, if you will be a pastor there, man, for at least the next 2 years, do it a minimum of, one service a month, go in there, do your thing, whether it's preaching, whatever they need, because I'm sure there's a prison ministry there because there are pastors that go in there. I will give you anything of mine for my training. Like you want to come through Platinum, buy the Winter Circle, $5,000 course, boom, it's yours. I will dedicate myself to helping you with your business, with your whatever, to making money if you will go do that. Because I got a buddy up there who needs somebody. And I'm not up there. I'm down here in SoCal.
And I'll throw in as well. I'll give you 3 hours consultation for your church plant, just one-on-one, or with your team.
And
I'll
that'll
throw
be
that in there.
That'll be total, and that's after you've completed 24 months of service. And
Disclaimer: this contract certain limitations do apply.
Oh my! We should actually get. Have you thought of your topic yet?
Go get your iPad, and I'll tell you.
I'm not getting my iPad. I don't know where it is.
I ain't hitting the pause button. It's too much editing.
It is.
All right. I got you. I feel your pain, dog. So next week we know what the topic is, though. You're going to read another chapter.
I got to read the rest of this chapter.
Then we're going to come on here again.
Yeah. And if you're wondering,
by the way, David Thompson's up there in Oregon too.
I did actually. I Googled how far he is from it. The thing is, he's pretty far. He's like 3.5 hours.
Yeah. Oh, that's kind of
Sun
far.
River to Sheridan's like 3.5 hours.
Oh, yikes! Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, so that's why.
How close is he to a town called Tigris or Albany, Oregon?
It's like in between Salem and Portland, but just like closer to the coast. So
one of my mentors, the guy who first discipled me in ministry, lives up in Albany.
I don't know.
And that's not too far. It's pretty close to Salem. I think he's on the I-5 corridor going up to Oregon. So, and he would go. Like he's done prison ministry back when he was down here. So he would go. He's pretty down to earth. So
what was funny is, so
he wouldn't want your Bible inner circle training though.
Yeah, I know he doesn't, which is cool. Hey, that'll save me $5,000 right there.
And me 3 hours, because he'd be like, come on, Peyton, you're going to consult with me for 3 hours? I kind of trained you.
Oh, now I forgot what I was going to say, but it was going to be pretty funny. So forget it. No, I can't remember anymore.
All right. Well, so today's topic, we're in the month.
Wait.
Church Planner Magazine.
Okay.
No sponsors today?
No, you're supposed to do Regal.
Okay. All right. Hey, church planner. Should I get my church? When
and we wonder why we can't keep a sponsor.
All right. So, guys, if you're looking for a place to meet, you can meet in a community center, you can meet in a school. That's great. But you can also meet in a movie theater. The Regal Cinemas family is offering that church planners rent their movie theaters in Sunday morning before the rush hour traffic for movies happens on the weekends. In order to check this out, you have to go to corporateboxoffice.com/ theater church. That's theater, THEATRE-church. And if you check that out, they have a team of 4 former church
thought
planners.
of their URL.
We so have to change this. I'm going to go to GoDaddy and buy them a new handle and sell it to them at thousands of dollars. I've got my pinky to my mouth right now, like Dr. Evil. Thousands of dollars. And anyways, so you can check that out. Guys, check it out. Some of our guys, some of you listeners have already done it and worked out a deal with them. It's one of the coolest ways to get involved in your community at a hub, which is kind of what Paul did. Now, you are sitting in theater seats, but the cool thing is that you could meet and actually start a cinema film critics club that meets there and meets one side. To me, that is missional engagement. In fact, it's funny, Pete, I actually was talking a few months back and kind of really consulting with them to say, hey, here's how you really make it applicable to these church planners to help them to actually reach their community. It's not just renting the place on a Sunday. It's the stuff you do in the week there. It's even more important. So check that out, guys. Excuse me for coughing in the middle of my commercial. It's corporateboxoffice.com/theater. Remember, that's THEATRE-church.
That's right. Cool. So, on with today's topic.
Well, we are in the month of January right now, and that means everybody's like hitting the gym and trying to eat right and get up earlier and not yell at their kids as much. Pete, I'm looking at you. And also keep goals. So this is the time, if you remember a few months ago, everybody was after you to get their planner. Everybody's talking about goals or webinars, seminars, get my email, get my free videos, blah, blah, blah. Well, really, forward planning is essential. Like, here we are in January. You guys already need to be thinking about Easter. If you're not thinking about Easter right now, you're kind of blowing it, right? These are the big days. And I know there's some people that go, hey, big days, that's stupid. Cool. Tell that to God, because he decided to do something really cool on a big day in the Jewish calendar known as Pentecost, or the Feast of First Fruits. There's this little thing that happened, Holy Spirit dropped like a bomb, and Peter got up and preached a sermon, and 5,000 men, not counting women and children, came to faith. Kind of a big deal. So big days.
I thought it was 3,000.
Huh?
I thought it was 3,000.
What did I say? 5,000?
I thought you said 5.
Yeah, I meant 3.
But I don't know. I'd already tuned you out and started.
You're right. It was 3.
On Facebook.
No, I was wrong. I was just testing you to see if you were paying attention or tuning me out. Yeah, that was it. And anyway, so 3,000, yes. And so here's the thing, guys, is God used strategically a big day, a place where people would already be there. There was still the Passover crowd, but it was a feast day. And so Peter goes to the temple where people were already gathered there. And so here's the deal, is those big days are going to be strategic, but you have to forward plan. It was Dwight Eisenhower, the Operation Overlord commander during World War II, which was the amphibious land assault that basically changed the course of World War II when the Americans got involved at D-Day. He said to fail to plan is to plan to fail. So a lot of these goals and a lot of these planning tools are literally to help you strategically impact better. So I am a list builder. I am an organizer. I am a schedule nut, a schedule geek. I can't tell you how much I stare at my calendar and forward plan. So I'll have people say, hey, how do you get this stuff done? And, I don't think I'm the busiest or most productive person on the planet. I definitely am not going to pretend to be. But I do think that, according to the Strength Finder, I'm an achiever. I like finishing tasks. I get a charge. I get a jolt out of finishing projects or accomplishing things. So I'm kind of like an accomplishment junkie. That doesn't always mean that it's the things I need to be doing, or, it doesn't mean that I always have priorities right. And so forward planning, setting goals, all those kinds of things are a way for you to come aside and say, what do I need to achieve? First off, it starts with calling. What do you think God's calling you to do? And so today I want to kind of help you to think through being strategic in how you plan. Because like I said, if you don't plan, you plan to fail. You're already planning. You're just planning not to really do as much that you could have had you stopped and planned. So what I love about, the book of Acts is even Jesus starts off telling the apostles what they're going to do. So if you ever want to understand the breakdown of the book of Acts, Jesus, tells them, hey, the Spirit will fall. Let me tell you the plan, right? Because they go, hey, Lord, at this time, are you going to, restore the kingdom to Israel? And he goes, hey, that's none of your business. Those times and dates are known only to the Father. Let me tell you what is your business, kingdom expansion. And then he goes, so here's the plan. Spirit's going to come. He's going to fall. And you are going to be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and then to the ends of the earth. That's a plan. Like, that is a strategic, structural outline. And the book of Acts, by the way, follows that paradigm. It literally follows that trajectory. It starts off in Jerusalem, first few chapters, start off in Jerusalem. Then in chapter, I want to say where I'm at, 7 and 8, goes to Judea and Samaria. was when it starts with Paul's persecution. It spreads up there. Then in chapter 9, you have Saul's conversion, which is the start, really, the hinge in Acts, where it starts talking about the Gentile world, because it's calling the apostle to the Gentiles. So that's the ends of the earth part. And then chapter 10 is Peter, how Peter got called to the Gentiles, and they included the Gentiles. And then the rest of it is to the ends of the earth. How did the gospel eventually get to Rome, which all roads lead to? So what I'm saying is there was a plan, right? God literally told him this is what's going to happen. Even way back when he calls Abraham, he does the same thing. He goes, this is the plan. I'll bless you and you'll become a blessing, and then you'll bless the world around you. And that was the plan. And of course, we don't see that fulfilled really, because Israel failed miserably in partnering with God in that plan. And then when the gospel comes, the plan is taken up, just like, the law, which failed to bring about the righteousness of God. Jesus picks it up through the gospel. Like, everything gets redeemed and picked up again. So there's just some underlying theology there. But again, God always comes with a plan. When he appears to Paul, this is like my apologetic. I don't know why I'm beating this dead horse, but he comes to Paul and he says, hey, here's your ministry. From now on, you will open the eyes of the blind. You will go to the Gentiles. You will do this. And he gives him the plan, like what his calling is. So always when you start with planning, you start with what has God called you to do. So this year, and it's different for me every year, usually I follow guys that I think, hey, I could learn from that dude. He gets a lot of stuff done. So one of those guys is Michael Hyatt. And by the way, I'm not in any kind of contract with Michael Hyatt to push his stuff. I just have paid attention to him for a long time. So this year he came out with a full focus planner, and he also had.
But let's just throw out there, Michael Hyatt, we'd love to be on a contract with you to promote your stuff. We need another
he'll
sponsor.
Do affiliate links like crazy.
No. I want a paid sponsor. Come on.
All right. Well, I can reach out, Pete. So here's the deal, though. He did Best Year Ever. He did Living Forward, and he did Full Focus Planner. Because what Michael Hyatt knows is everybody wants to accomplish more. Like, everybody has, I would say, that thing that they want to do. Like Pete, he's a marketer, but what he really wants to do is help church planners, right? Like, that was the thing he wanted to do, something of eternal significance. He also has wanted all his life to perform at least once on stage in front of 1,000 people doing ballet. Now, so he's got these two things.
I said belly dancing.
Oh my gosh, that would be so rad. Are you sure it's not that thing where you put a hat on the upper part of your body? And
I am speaking in exponential.
Your belly button like lips and whistle.
I am speaking in exponential, so I'm just saying.
Hey, all I'm saying is wear a tutu. Belly dance. Oh, the veil. The veil. You got to wear the veil when you belly dance. So, anyways, that is a horrific thought.
Welcome to the Church Planner Podcast.
Welcome to the Church Planner Podcast. But, where was I don't even know where I was going.
You were talking about things that I've always wanted to do.
So everybody has that. So Michael Hyatt comes along and says, hey, let me help you achieve what you want to achieve. But it starts with the calling of God. What is God calling you to do? And so what Hyatt suggests, and I have yet to meet someone who has done this, go away for a day, he says, and determine what your calling is. Well, recently I had to do this. My mentor recently in my life is a guy named Mac Lake. And I remember telling him some opportunities that were coming my way and just some cool things that were shaken down, and it helped me to impact.
Excuse
money.
you, by the way. We'll just go.
Did I burp? Did you hear that?
Oh, only on the podcast. I mean, it's a high class.
It was an accident.
This is one of
those burps where you're talking, it sneaks out.
This is one of our better episodes. That's all I can say. There's no doubt.
If you're listening, you're like, oh, they must be having an off day. No, this is really good today. It's a really good episode. So, which I so wish we had Stetzer's quote. What are you guys, like a couple guys hanging out in mom's basement drinking beers? Remember that? Talking
I
church
totally
planning.
He said that to us right before he quit ever coming on our podcast.
That is true.
I'm not going back on
true.
that guy's podcast. Nope, never again.
Or Yancey, when I came in, going, woo! And he was like, "What, Sean?"
Philip. The name is Philip Yancey.
Not our best moments on the podcast by any means. Anyway, so going back into this, so he says go away, and so I had to do this recently where Mac Lake was like, "Look, you got to think, what do you want to leave behind to the church? Like, what's the legacy of your calling? What impact do you think God wanted you to make?" And it doesn't matter. Like, it's not like, oh, I want people to know my name, shout my name, and give me goodies. It's not what I want. It's what has God called me for? Like, Paul makes this statement where he says, I want to take hold of that for which Christ Jesus took hold of me. When Paul talks about that upward call, there was something that Paul felt that he was supposed to accomplish. And we get a glimpse into that when we come into Romans 15, where Paul says, therefore I have fulfilled my ministry, that from Jerusalem to Illyricum I have preached the gospel. So Paul felt he had fulfilled, he had taken hold of that for which Christ Jesus had taken hold of him when he appeared to him on the road and said, I'm going to make you a light to the Gentiles. You're going to open the eyes of the blind. Paul felt he had accomplished that in his sphere, which we would all agree he did. In fact, he was a stud, right? Very few people have approached anywhere near accomplishing what Paul accomplished, especially against such hard circumstances. So when you look at that, you got to look at your calling. So I did this thing. I think I mentioned to you guys that I used something called the vision frame that Will Mancini in a book called Church Unique comes up with. And so a lot of guys, like if you're going through NAMS training, part of what we train in the Sin Network training is we'll take you through this and we'll say, what is the mission? Like, what has God called you to do in that city? Are you reaching the lost and the broken? Like in Refuge Long Beach, we're going after the marginalized. We're not going after the rich people. There are rich people, B. Mitchell, in Long Beach. And we could go after those people, but God didn't call us to do that. We knew from day one we are going after the marginalized in Long Beach, the people that nobody's going after. We want to plant in the neighborhood where people don't right away think, oh, I should plant there. We want to reach people that are one stop away from hell, right? One hair's breadth between life and death, as David said. That's where we're at. So that was our mission. It was a unique mission. Well, so when you do a vision frame, if you want to read Church Unique, you can learn all about the vision frame. But I had to come up with a mission statement for my life. Like, what is it God's called me to do? Have you ever thought of that? Like, what's your mission statement? What did God put you here on planet Earth to do? So for me, my mission statement is to glorify God and make disciples by equipping the next generation to reverse the decline of the church through reformation and revival. Church planting is just a part of that for me, right? Church planting is kind of included in that to reverse the decline of the church. But I don't want to do that without reforming the way people think and seeing revival, which if you've read the recent book, Reaching the Unreached, cha-ching, that's a big part of it, is turning people back like a prophet, back, pointing them back to God. Like, that's great. You got all this other stuff, but that's part of my message. That's part of my calling. And so, as you're looking at your church or your individual life, you can do this for both. I would heavily suggest you forward plan, for your life personally and for your church, because they're not the same thing. You are not your church. You should have your own mission statement on top of your church having its own mission statement. Does that make sense, Pete?
Mm-hmm.
So then if you go into the vision frame, which I won't spend a bunch of time, but I'll just highlight, there's also strategy. How are you going to accomplish this mission? Then and usually that's like 5 things you list out. Your values. What are your values? Because there are people that I think they claw their way. Like I trained a guy And he went and took everything we trained him in with the Sin Network, and he ripped us off. And he basically took it, didn't credit us, and started his own thing, got a promotion in his denomination. And, I watch guys do this kind of stuff where they don't operate by the values of the kingdom. A lot of church plants are, you look at the church plants and they might grow up super big and appear very successful. But when you peer behind the scenes, there's a trail of broken bodies and bones and blood. It's like, they built an empire on the backs of, like the Pharaoh did the Jews, man. He built his empire on the back of slaves, that people were not valued. They were seen as tools and a means to an end. And so when you look from afar, it's this cool looking thing. But when you get behind the scenes, people are getting the snot beat out of them, or, people are feeling used and abused and neglected. And so, you got to look at your values, and your values are the culture. What do people get when they're around you? What's the value what's the atmosphere when they walk into your church? That'll be shaped by your values. And so, if I look at my personal values, these are mine. That everything is built on the foundation of grace. The gospel has to be the foundation of everything. That's my personal one. But the second thing is the gospel has teeth. So I'm not going to, just county code everything. And I've watched the gospel where it says Paul stands before Agrippa and he preaches to Agrippa. And he says he reasons with him concerning, I think it was, I'm losing it. The kingdom of God, self-control, and the judgment to come. And that's where, Agrippa says, you almost persuaded me to be a Christian. But Paul's reasoning with him on these things, or it might have been Festus, I can't remember. But those three things, two of those things are sharp: self-control and the judgment to come. Paul knew the gospel had teeth. It doesn't just gum and slobber love all over everybody all the time. Sometimes the gospel has a bite to it. And I want to preach a grace-filled gospel that has a bite, right? That also still has a, hey, but you're under the judgment of God. Until then, I don't want to play around. So my third value, it's funny because they're like these two sides of the coin, and then there's a balance. No compromise on truth. I don't want to compromise. Pete and I have talked about this before, that we will not have certain guests on here, that, on our podcast, that, it doesn't mean they have to be a Christian. Doesn't mean they have to agree with us on everything. But if somebody is screwing around with truth, we don't have them on here, because there's a no compromise when it comes to the revelation of who God is. This is a revealed faith. He revealed himself. Number 4, first century first. First century first, that's always what I'm going to look to. And number 5, spirit-filled or bust. If I can't do what I do with the Holy Spirit, or if I can do it without needing the Holy Spirit, maybe it's not my deal. Or lastly, I'm Holy Spirit or bust means I go all out to make sure I'm filled with the Holy Spirit. So those 5 things are kind of like my values. But what about for my church? We have values for a church. We did a whole episode on the values you can do for your church. So anyways, the last thing is your measures, which tell you when you're successful. And that would be like, what does a fully formed disciple who's been through your ministry look like? What do they describe them? And that's measures of success for a church. They've been through your church. They've been on mission with you. They've gone through your strategy, been a part of that. They've incorporated your values. Now, what do they look like at the end of that process? So that's it. But so you need to know big picture where you're going first. And then your goals, you can start to make goals from that. Like, for example, on the vision frame, the middle part of the frame, that's just the 4 sides of the frame. The middle, like the picture in the middle, is where am I going? So I want to know, like, for the next year, what should I be focusing on? If that's my mission, if that's my strategy, what do I need to focus on? So, for me personally, I have goals that I focus on. I have yearly goals, and I will have 3 big goals a quarter that I want to reach. So, I don't know, Pete, am I talking sense? Do you do stuff like this?
I used to do, more of it, and I haven't in a while. And part of the reason is for me, cause you have to also tailor all of this stuff to your own personality type.
Yeah.
So one of the things that would happen to me, and I'd notice this, is I can get into the grandiose goals. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to achieve. This is how I want to live, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it all starts with taking action. And it's kind of like, okay, great. So I got all these goals, but big deal if you don't take action. Now I'm much more of an action person, and I would benefit, I know, from having, more written goals, but I just, take action. I mean, we actually talk about this a lot in the Voxer group with some of the, with some of the pastors that are in the Bivo Inner Circle, which you can find all about at bivoinnercircle.com. And, it's, cha-ching. You got to take action, right? You can have all these great goals and things that you want to accomplish and the person you want to be, blah, 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 blah. Take some action. Just do it.
That's, I would say, one of your major strengths. Like, I would probably still be thinking and praying about the podcast if I had not, you know what I'm saying? Because to be honest, like, I remember we were talking about it and you were like, well, let's go. And I'll never forget. It was kind of like, there was no way we were ready to start it. And you go, hey, let's do it this week. And I go, what? Like, don't you want to?
I remember saying to you, I go, I'm starting it this week with or without you.
Right. Because for me, it was like, well, let's plan it and let's get it. And you're like, let's just do it. Boom. And I am convinced that if it was not for you, we probably still would not have started it. And I'm not saying I'm not an action, like I take a lot of action.
Yeah.
But literally it was like, that was inspiring. Like, and you don't know how many times I think I grew from that a bit, where I was able to go, you just do it. You go for it and you take the action. And I've heard this a lot from people that because a lot of people, they're perfectionists. And they want everything to be perfect before they launch anything, perfect before they start. And I know for you, it's often, well, I'm going to try this and see what results I get, because you're very results oriented.
Right.
And so you'd be like, I remember you even in the conversation we had yesterday where you're like, well, that's what I do is I prototype things and I come back and look at the results and I'm constantly changing what I do. So you're always moving forward. Like, standing still planning is hard for you, I would imagine.
To a degree, but you're starting to like delve into a different world, into the business world. And part of my problem, and I know this about myself, is, and we kind of talked about this, I think it was our Band of Brothers call that we did. It was Stephanie who asked about, the enemy attacking us in business and blah, 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 and, wanted our opinions on it and stuff like that. And I would say, like, for myself, the thing that's harder for me in business right now is because of my success. The more success I have, the harder it is for me to take action, because it's kind of like, what do I care? Like I was explaining on the call, financial freedom is when you have more money coming in than you have going out. And when you've got more money coming in than you have going out, it's kind of like, do I really need to work? Like December, I did not do much of anything. One, because it's December. And two, I was at the range. Like,
I was going to say, two, because of guns.
I blew through so much money on ammunition. It's not even funny, which I'll be going to the range today at 3:00 if anyone wants to join. But
we're mapping out on the podcast Pete's descent into poverty.
Oh, dude, I'm telling you. So one of the things that I was telling the guys at various times in the Bible Inner Circle, in some respects, you can't focus on the results. You have to focus on the action needed to obtain the results. Because if you start focusing on the results, when you start getting those results, you get complacent. And it's like, I got it made, right? But when you focus on the action, this is what I have to do. I got to go to this BNI meeting. I need to go to this chamber meeting. I need to go do a competitive intelligence report for this guy over here. When you're focused on the actions, then the success keeps coming. The results, I should say, keep coming, not necessarily the success, but the results keep coming. And, along the lines of what you were talking about, like, what would benefit me, and I know this would benefit me, is if I did like you were talking about, come up with, okay, what are my pillars? What do I stand for? And not just be all dreamy about it, but take my action oriented self and go, okay, great. Then this is what I need to focus on. And if I just keep focusing on these areas, I stop looking at the results and I focus on the action, then you're going to hit it and you're going to keep going. And
that's
I don't
good.
know if that makes any sense, but
no, that makes a lot of sense. I've actually heard very similar things to that. Gary Vaynerchuk kind of says very similar things to that, he'll talk about playing the long game.
That's because he listens to the podcast and he copies me.
He does. I know. I keep trying. I get so jealous. I'm like, come on, Vayner Nation. It's Pete. He's the magic behind
It's Peter Nation.
Chuck.
It's Peter Nation.
It's the Mitchell Nation. So here's the deal. When it comes to your church, and I just say that as a background because I think you need to know where you're going. I think your church needs to know where it's going. And I think then you can extrapolate goals out of those two things. Don't just make goals like, I just want to do this. Like, find out your mission first. What are you called to? Paul knew his mission from Jesus, right? You may need to spend some time with Jesus to figure out what your mission is, what you're calling. If you don't know that, that's like priority number one. And then your church also, what are you called to do? And then here's the thing, getting down to let's get down to the nitty gritty. Let's get down to, for your church. I started off with a direct application saying Easter. It's January. It's almost February, right? Don't wait until April. And sometimes, man, Easter comes in March. Like, don't wait till after Thanksgiving to start planning for Christmas. You need to be planning for Christmas in August, right? Like, you need to be forward planning. In fact, what I would say for all of you guys right now is map out on a piece of paper January, February, March, every month and look at it. Well, how can I strategically harness the rhythms of the culture I'm planting in to be about, like, to use this for the gospel? So, for example, I find it amazing that God harnesses the census to fulfill prophecy for Jesus to be born in Bethlehem. How can you harness the rhythms and activities? If you study church planting in China, you'll know that there's this massive migration throughout China every year where people don't work in the communities they live. They have to travel like hundreds of miles, thousands of miles to get to a factory. It's seasonal work. And so there's massive migrations. Well, the gospel has been shifting through that. So what I'm saying is you have to be able to look at the opportunities like Paul did on Mars Hill, or, just harness Paul harnessed the trade routes. That's why he ended up in Corinth, and Rome is obvious, but some of these other places were literally he was following the trade routes. So follow the rhythms of your culture. So, for example, if I look at January is a time of new beginnings. So I want to plan out that it's too late now, but in 2019, I want to do some kind of maybe event, or I want to have a series, or I want to have maybe like a group that meets together for fitness, and a meetup group that's going to eat right, that's going to do this. I want to do some kind of community-based starting again. Maybe I join one, maybe I don't start it, but this is how I'm strategically thinking. Then in February, I got Valentine's Day. Why not, advertise like something where you you do a Valentine's dinner and you raffle off like 6 months of marriage counseling. People are always saying they can't afford marriage counseling, right? Boom, you're doing that. March, you got St. Patrick's Day. I don't know what you can do with that. I stay away from St. Patrick's Day. I've had bad experiences, but Easter, that's your big day, man. That's the day where like people are most likely to come to church on those 2 days than any other time in the year, right? I'm going to make sure that I do something cool. We've had whole episodes about what you do that's not dumb or cheesy or whatever, right? It doesn't have to all be church-based. In fact, you'll notice a lot of this isn't church-based, but on Easter, do something church-based, because people are going to be at church. You always want to go where the traffic is. May, you're coming up to the end of the year. Maybe May is kind of like, I don't know. I'm missing something in May. What, Mother's Day? I don't know, man. Like, be creative. June, summer reading, right? In Britain, if you're in Britain, they're big on holiday, going on holiday somewhere. So summer reading is a big thing. I don't know if it's that big here, but you will see summer reading stuff. It's like a big push for book publishers in the UK because everyone's going to go on a holiday, lay by a pool out in the sun because they don't get sun there. But they're going to go somewhere in the Mediterranean and lay out. And because they're laying out and they're bored, they're going to read books. So you got that.
See, here in the States, they do that with Netflix. That's when Netflix makes its big push because everyone's going to lay by the pool and watch House
Netflix.
of Cards.
Yeah. Well, and there's probably truth to that. So then, summer barbecues, right? Like do the barbecues, man. We talked about doing a reading group, for our neighborhood. Last year that was the target. And then of course my mom, passed away and we ended up spending all summer elsewhere. But that was our strategic plan with our neighbors. All of my neighbors read. So we put a fire pit in my backyard and said, hey, let's gather all of our neighbors together and let's start a reading group. My neighbors are like, that's rad. Yeah, let's do that. And then of course we ended up not being here, but I would do that. I would start looking at what we call missional cogs or your small groups. Make them missional in the summer. Activate them. Back to school. You do school-based things, right? You approach the principal in May, and you say, hey, what can we do? Don't wait until September. It's too late. Approach them in May. And don't volunteer things like, hey, we're going to give you backpacks next year. Ask them, how can we bless you guys next year? Tell us what you need, and we'll do it. Right? Like, we're not coming with ideas. We will do whatever you need. And then again and again and again, like I said, October, November, Thanksgiving. I mean, we activated our church in November to get out on the mission field. Basically, if you read Reaching the Unreached, cha-ching, that was November. I planned that at the Sunday after Thanksgiving, I would turn the entire church loose into the park for 45 minutes. It ended up being like 2.5 hours. But those are the things that you want to look at the calendar and say, if I were to do an outreach, or if I were to be intentional in small groups or missional communities or what, and it's outreach I'm talking about, because if you don't plan it, it doesn't happen. Some of this planning needs training. It needs, discipleship. You've got to take people away and teach them how to do this stuff. So you can't just throw this stuff overnight. There's a lot of organization with some of the stuff that needs to be done. You might need to go talk to someone in a local coffee shop. So that's all I'm saying is forward planning is a big deal. You got to have goals. And I would do it monthly, and I would set target dates out from the month. Like, if we do this thing in May, we need to have everything stitched up by February to have this done by. Does that make sense?
It does.
And I do planning meetings as well. I schedule 1 or 2 what I call vision meetings a year. Peter will remember those at Long Beach. We call everyone together, and it's always a focus on mission. I say, hey, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do for the next year or 6 months or whatever it is. This is our focus. And I share everything with everybody. And I introduce big innovative changes in the church during that time. So I make it exciting. Like, come to this. We're going to have fun. We're going to do this. We're going to have food. And then got some surprises for you, and people are nosy, so they want to come to those. And then I tell them things like, they show up and I tell them, used to be our online giving portal M-O-G, sorry. And so I would introduce those kinds of things. Like right now it'd be PushPay, right? I would be like, hey, PushPay is the one I use, let's do blah, yada, yada. And, I remember when we did that, if we didn't have that vision meeting, we would have been hurting. Cause you remember, Pete, our giving doubled after we introduced online
That's
giving.
what you said. Yeah. I wasn't treasurer then, so I don't know about that, but that's what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would do all that. I would plan all those things out. I would have seasons of training, but you got to plan this stuff because otherwise, you know what's going to happen? You're just going to flow Sunday to Sunday and nothing ever changes. And you keep preaching your sermons and people keep coming and sitting there and you never get people mobilized on mission. But this is the apostolic guy in me talking. So a shepherd would be totally different, by the way. You know how we talked about the different roles. By the way, you're hearing all an apostolic perspective on this. Forward planning for a shepherd is let's talk about small groups. Where are small groups going? How are we going to disciple the children? How are we going to They're all about discipleship and relationship. So they will have their own set of agenda. And when you come together as a leadership team, you're going to hit it from the angle that you're at. Our prophets will be like, hey, I noticed in these groups here that we don't have anyone with prophetic gifts or any of the supernatural type gifts. We should have a day on that, where we teach people about that. And we ask people to, maybe spend some time in prayer and worship and maybe some afterglows, like what we used to call, I don't know what they call them now, but extended times of praise and worship. We used to call it kick out the jams. We had one night a month where we had kick out the jams night and we just worshiped and prayed and people were able to explore their gifts. And it was rad. It was totally charismatic, but it was rad. So, but these are things that don't happen if you don't plan them.
Right.
So that's it.
Well,
let me land the plane. And that's why you should plan. There we go. Thanks for flying.
I got a bad feeling about this.
All right. Well, Pete, anything to add on that?
Go Fight Win.
I like that. What's that from?
I don't know.
Ready Player One?
Oh, Smack Talk's over. Smack Talk's over.
Dang. Missed it. So, guys, thanks for joining the Church Planter Podcast today. This has been Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones reminding you if you want to reach the ones nobody's reaching, need to go where nobody's going and do what nobody's doing.
I made my money the old-fashioned way. I got run over by a Lexus.
Thanks for joining us for another weekly episode of the Church Planter Podcast with Pete Mitchell and Peyton Jones. We'd love to hear your comments on this episode of the Church Planter Podcast. Visit us online and let us know what you thought at churchplanterpodcast.com. If you subscribe to us via iTunes and have enjoyed the podcast, leave us a positive review. The more positive reviews we receive in iTunes, the more iTunes will promote us to other church planners who would benefit from this show. This podcast is brought to you by the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the iTunes newsstand or online via churchplantermagazine.com.